So I'm here today to talk about the lessons that we've learned from Cyclone Gabrielle and the other North Island severe weather events which have lashed the country over the last 2 or 3 years. See, as we know, flooding is one of the most severe natural hazards that we face as a country, and both in terms of impact and frequency. Cyclone Gabrielle is a very recent reminder of the devastation major flood events can cause, and as we see the effects of climate change, it's increasing the frequency and severity of these major events. Cyclone Gabrielle lashed the top of the North Island, most of the impacts being felt across Hawke's Bay, but even here in the Wellington region we had damage. Tragically, saw 11 fatalities from Cyclone Gabrielle, and to date $13.5 billion worth of damages, making it one of the most expensive tropical cyclone events in the Southern Hemisphere. So the impacts of major flood events goes far beyond the damage to infrastructure and homes. We see obviously the amount of displaced people we have during some of these severe weather events can be in the hundreds of thousands, and they can be out of their homes for months, if not years, and we still have displaced people now from Cyclone Gabrielle. There's also the knock-on impact on the social fabric of our communities. It's not just people and homes and businesses, it's the services and amenities that make up our communities, our pubs, our libraries, our healthcare facilities that people need to live and thrive in these communities also take a long time to recover. It's not just those physical impacts that we see, the impacts on people's mental health and social well-being. It's also some of the hidden impacts of these major flood events, things like PTSD, people reacting every time they hear the rainfall on the roof. Moving on from that, there's obviously the challenges with insurance, and working through the insurance process can be quite complex and lengthy for many people. There's also the impact on staff and responders, a greater demand for action from councils and public authorities to build defences, protect, repair and respond. And also the impact on staff, who are also members of the communities as well, and we're working through their own family impacts as well as trying to respond to that increased pressure. We see that taking a toll on our people. So next, let's consider a scenario where a Cyclone Gabrielle scale event struck the Wellington region. Before we do that, it is worth remembering that the cyclone did have impacts for us and caused substantial flooding in Tanui and the Walalapa coast over in the Walalapa. But what happens if an event of that scale was centred across our urban centres, the Hutt, Wellington City or Polilua? An event like this is a progression, and we see the impacts build as the event moves through the region. The initial impacts we would see are in those coastal zones where high winds and heavy swells may cause coastal flooding of some of our coastal communities. Next, we would see stormwater impacts, so that's flooding, localised flooding of roading, maybe some properties. Before, if enough rainfall fell, the rivers would rise, potentially leading to overtopping or breaching of our defences. And in those overtopping events, we'd see water coming over the top of our stop banks and causing catastrophic flooding of our communities. In the Wellington region, we have approximately 200,000 people living in flood-prone areas. It's about 30% of our population. Our region is fragile. A lot of our roading and our utilities woven through steep hill country. This makes us particularly susceptible to severe weather events. So what have we learned? Considering first the defences. Defences were in place across many of the rivers in Hawke's Bay, and in some areas they were overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the event. In some areas they did protect large swathes of the community, for example Taradale and the Huratonga Plains. Here in the Wellington region we have defences across the 15 major river schemes that Greater Wellington manages and maintains, like here on the Hutt River. But we recognise that defences alone are just part of our toolbox for managing flood risk. So secondly, warning systems. Unfortunately, there were very few effective community warnings issued during Cyclone Gabrielle. There's a number of reasons for this, really infrastructure failure or just the timing of the event. Here in the Wellington region, we are working closely with our emergency management group to build better processes, better practice, and to plan for those extreme weather events. Next, let's consider land use planning. It's a painful reflection of all recent severe weather events. The new housing developments in flood-prone areas are experiencing flooding. We work closely with our partners here and our territorial authorities to ensure that good decisions are made around land use planning, and we avoid developing in flood-prone areas. Mana Whenua were disproportionately affected by this event. It is important that agencies work together with Mana Whenua in risk management planning and in response to future events. Next, let's consider the economics of the recovery. Repairing damage to flood defences, infrastructure and communities is expensive and often beyond the means of local authorities and communities to afford. So central government assistance was and is still required. Greater Wellington does have mature flood and asset management plans, and we do hold funding contingencies to deal with smaller events. We have been also able to access central government funding to build major defences through flood resilience funding. In summary, a multi-tooled approach is needed to flood risk management. A combination of emergency management, structural solutions such as stop banking or nature-based solutions, river and channel maintenance, and also our land use planning, ensuring that we don't develop in unsuitable areas. We are working with our local emergency management to understand the impacts of an event of this scale, and we encourage you all to understand your own flood risk by looking at our website and seeing what works we are doing in your area.